people and have just absorbed so much knowledge. And just this whole summer, I mean, it's been an extreme learning experience. And one thing that I really feel that a lot of the people where I come from have like a struggle is becoming too conscious of yourself. Like, I remember when I was a kid, people used to make fun of, and I didn't know I had big ears or, you know, like, and then they would point it out, and then I would notice, or like, for instance, you know, everybody wakes up in the morning, they're like, oh God, does my hair look good? You know, and if your hair doesn't look good, then you're like separating yourself from feeling good because you're like, oh no, is my hair, And it doesn't even matter if my hair looked good or not, because when I was a kid, my hair probably looked ridiculous, you know, like, but I was still like vibing and doing my thing. And
so you're saying to us that when you were a kid, that you had your priorities in a better place because you were joyful and you cared about how you felt more than you cared about how your hair looked, until the socialization began to take place and you began to care more what other people think. And what you're getting at is when people behold you and have a response to what they see and give you feedback about what they see, if you come to care more about how they feel about you than you do about how you feel, now you get trained out of your own guidance system. It's the whole point that we're making, and you're making it even better than we are. So the question is, how could someone come forth as a child, tuned in, tapped in, turned on? We see you. You're pure positive energy. You're born into the physical environment. And just by nature of what you see here, you separate a little bit. Then you go to sleep and you're one stream. You wake up, you separate a little. The longer you live and the more you worry about your hair and the more you worry about what other people think about you and the more separated you get, the more you push and worry and fuss. Then you learn how to meditate and you stop thought, which means you stop resistance and you close the gap. Or you learn how to appreciate. You criticize, you widen the gap, you appreciate, you close the gap. So by being aware of the way you feel, you can begin to control your bliss. You can control it. You can maintain it, in fact. But it requires something that we think you're pointing out brilliantly, and that is you cannot take into your vibration what other people think about you, because they have no way of accurately assessing you. They're seeing you. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and so is ugliness. So is criticism. So is blithering idiotness. In other words, how someone beholds you is about what they're doing with their vibrational gap. Has nothing to do with you. When you are in alignment with who you are, you evoke the best from people. Esther loves going anywhere with Jerry. She loves being in a restaurant, just the two of them, with Jerry, and watching him honor and solicit upliftment from the people that they interact with. She loves watching him take an interest in them, a sincere interest. He's not trying to fix something that's broken. He is sincerely interested in them. And then he will ask them a question that they will feel honored to answer, and then he will take an interest in their answer. And next time they come back by the table, he will say, what did you mean about that? And Esther watches them walk away again and again, taller and surer and stronger and happier. And she looks at him and feels such love for the innate uplifter that he is. But it's because he's in alignment with Source, and in his alignment with Source, he sees only opportunity to help others come into alignment, you see. Much of the world does not behave that way. Not because they're not nice, and not because they're not good, and not because they are not innately well-meaning, but because they're out there raw and ragged, separated from who they are. And when you're not in alignment with who you are, you don't have anything to give another. So what happens to so many people is that they're out there raw and ragged themselves, running around with other raw and ragged, disconnected people, trying to make their hair look good enough that somebody will think that their hair looks good enough. And we say, when you're asking somebody who's disconnected how your hair looks, they're going to find something wrong with it no matter how your hair looks. Your hair looks good, by the way.
Thank you. So
The last thing Esther said as she walked down the hallway is, "It's too late." And the next thing she said was, "Who cares?"
is it cool to keep talking?
Now, if you're in a room full of people like this, who adore you, it's easy, isn't it? But the tricky thing is, when their love of you buoys you, then their disdain of you can deflate you. And so the trick is to not give a rip what they think.
Right.
So what's cool is not caring.
Right.
You've got that down. She sat in the chair yesterday and went on and on and on and on and on and on. We'll hear you.
This feeling of not caring. See, I've had like some amazing experiences probably this last 2 years. I've tried and tried and tried to like be myself. You know, you're at a party, there's dancing going on. You're like, man, I'm just not feeling myself. You know, and in a way, like that going upstream or paddling, it's kind of like you're putting on yourself. You're trying to be yourself, and people are like, dude, you're being phony. Or like, I play music. I'm a musician, and one of the hardest things to do is to play as though you're not playing for the audience. And in a way, when you're visualizing, or at least for the people that I speak of, when they're visualizing and they become conscious of negative aspects in their surroundings, they notice them and they try to forget them, but they're obviously there and they know that they're being noticed. And when you're on stage and you're playing music, it is one of the hardest things to act like you don't care about the audience.
Well, you can't act like you don't care. You have to sincerely not care. And the way you come to not care, and this is tricky because people have been trained to care. And it isn't that we want you to not be kind, and it isn't that we want you to not uplift. It's that we want you to understand that unless you've cared most about alignment with self, then you have nothing to give anyone else anyway. Sometimes people come to a gathering like this and they say, Abraham, you teach selfishness. And we say, yes, we do. Because if you're not selfish enough to demand your alignment, then you don't have anything to give anyone. As we talk to musicians or artists of any kind, there are so many different avenues. The thing that we most want to help them remember is that when you, as you've been living your life, you've been creating your dream. And this dream of what you want has been amassing. And when you are looking toward it and you are finding vibrational alignment with it, you are so compelling. You send out a vibrational signal to the boundaries of the universe, and you cannot help but have your success. But what so many do, whether they are authors or musicians or artists, or politicians, they want to take a poll of the environment to see what others want from them. And then they try to contour themselves to meet that need. People will tell you that all the time. Find a need and fill it. And we say, it is exactly the opposite of what we know to be. We would say, find what life has caused you to become and vibrationally match it. And the masses who are a match to you will beat a path to your door, you see. And when you think back of the bands or the individuals who have really made it, in every case, they were renegades. They were entrepreneurs that moved out ahead of the crowd. In other words, they were those that did something their way and were not contained or controlled by the disdain that the establishment gave them. And in every case, that was there. In every case, they reached out beyond, and in every case, the majority of people said, oh, you should not do that. But because they held to their dream, because it was more alive than the peanut gallery that was disagreeing, they stayed in vibrational alignment with who they were and radiated a powerful signal and thrived until sometimes they get swept up into the world where they can't help but consider what's going on. In other words, think about the greats that you know. And almost without exception, they followed this path where they had a dream, they followed their dream, they didn't listen to what anybody else said about it, they came into alignment and they thrived. And it wasn't until then they become this big public figure where the demand of the public causes them to do as you are saying, evaluate self, that they began to get scattered again. But they don't have to ever be scattered because their dream never stops expanding. The dream never stops expanding. Those kids that have those dreams and launch them and then come into greatness, all the while they're coming into greatness, they're still launching more dreams and more dreams and more dreams. So if along the way they have figured out how to, we think the words that you would choose would be true to themselves, and it certainly is the words that we would choose too. In the ultimate sense, be true to yourself when that's what you've learned, which means I care more about how I feel than what you think. I care more about how I feel than what anybody thinks. I care more about how I feel than if one song sells. I care more about how I feel. When that's really how you feel, you'll come into alignment, you'll radiate a signal, and you'll thrive. And the world will stand back in amazement and say, how is it that that happens? And then later on, the world will say, not only did this one have a dream and accomplishment, but this one, rare of all rarities, this one kept getting a new dream and accomplishing it too, and a new dream and accomplishing it too. And you know what? He doesn't seem to care about what anybody else thinks. He seems to just be going merrily on his way. It's as if the whole world is his oyster. And we say, it is. It is. That's the way it is supposed to be. But you got to factor out the peanut gallery. You've got to factor out the press. You've got to factor out the critics. You've got to factor out the dissenters. You've got to factor out those who are not in agreement with some aspect of you, because they don't count and they don't matter and they don't know. They don't know. They don't know. But you do. Something else?
Yeah, but it's not a question. I just wanted to point out, like, for the last 3 months, like, see, we went on your website and I was like, Dad, look, they're doing seminars. Oh my gosh. And for the past, like, 3 months, I was like, man, what would I ask them? And I still, to this day, like, you answer questions in my head. I don't even need to be here right now. And, like, I get so much done. That's probably been half of why I've been understanding so much. I'm like, oh, no, they'd say that. They would already answer it like that. Well, that's a good answer.
Because as you live life, you launch your evolution, your evolved question, your evolved desire, and the source energy within you calls you forward. And one way or another, you're going to get the answer. In other words, you don't need us. You have direct access to everything because the larger part of you has already become it. And because you have been wise enough to not give a rip, for the most part, what other people think, you have been following the trail of that vibration for a very long time.
Totally. I mean, you could see it, like, all of a sudden I'm in my room, I'm thinking, oh my God, what could I ask him? And then I'm literally right here, right now, asking you a question. It can't get any more real than this. I'm right here, right now. So, thank you so much.